Tonight we begin with something a little different. A tale of arrogance, miscalculation, and absolute terror. We're diving into what it was really like to kidnap the future ruler of Rome. Forget the romantic pirates Hollywood sold you. The truth? You probably wouldn't last a single day. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Congratulations, you've just made the worst mistake of your life. You've captured a 25-year-old Roman named Julius Caesar, thinking he's just another wealthy passenger. But this isn't some merchant's son. This is a man who will reshape the world, and right now, he's staring at you with cold calculation. Your first problem? Caesar isn't terrified, he's insulted. When you demand 20 talents of silver for his release, he laughs. Not nervously, but genuinely amused. He tells you the ransom is too low, that he's worth at least 50 talents. You've just been negotiating tips with a future emperor who's already planning your execution. Welcome to your final 24 hours. As a pirate, this is how Caesar's captivity becomes your death sentence. Picture this. You're sailing the Mediterranean in 75 BC, and piracy isn't just a career choice, it's practically an industry. The Roman Republic is stretched thin, their navy is focused elsewhere, and the seas are crawling with pirates who've turned kidnapping into an art form. Trade routes are your hunting grounds, and wealthy Romans are your favourite prey. You've built a reputation, gathered a crew of cutthroats, and life is good. Until today, your lookouts spot a small vessel flying Roman colours. Just a handful of passengers and crew. No military escort, no warships in sight. It looks like easy pickings. You order the attack, your crew swarms the deck, and within minutes you've captured everyone aboard. Among your prisoners is a young Roman who immediately starts barking orders like he owns the Mediterranean. His name, he tells you with insufferable confidence, is Gaius Julius Caesar. Now you've heard whispers of this name. He's from a patrician family, sure, but he's not exactly a household name yet. No major military victories, no consulship, just another entitled Roman brat with delusions of grandeur. You're thinking maybe 20 talents of silver for his ransom. A decent score, but nothing spectacular. You have absolutely no idea that you've just grabbed hold of a viper that will not only bite back, but will hunt down every single person involved in this kidnapping and crucify them along the coast of Asia Minor. Because here's what you don't know about your captive. This isn't just some rich Roman son playing at politics. This is Julius Caesar, at 25 years old, already displaying the calculating brilliance and terrifying ambition that will reshape the known world. He's been studying rhetoric in Rhodes, honing the skills that will one day mesmerize the Roman Senate and terrify his enemies. His mind is already working 3 steps ahead of everyone around him, including you. But let's rewind and understand exactly how catastrophically you've miscalculated. You see, piracy in the 1st century BC wasn't some romantic adventure. It was a brutal, bloody business that required you to be ruthless, paranoid, and most importantly, smart about your targets. The Mediterranean was infested with pirates because it worked. Roman merchants paid ransoms, Roman families negotiated for their loved ones, and the Roman government was too busy fighting wars on multiple fronts to clean up the seas effectively. Your typical operation was simple. Spot a merchant vessel or passenger ship, overwhelm it with superior numbers, take everyone valuable prisoner, and sail to your hidden base. Maybe it's a fortified island, maybe a secluded cove, but somewhere the Roman navy can't easily reach you. Then you send ransom demands and wait for the money to flow in. It's a proven system that's made countless pirates wealthy, but you've just broken the first rule of piracy. Know your target, because Julius Caesar isn't your typical Roman hostage. Even at 25, he's already connected to some of the most powerful families in Rome. His aunt was married to Gaius Marius, one of Rome's greatest generals. His uncle is Gaius Aurelius Cotta, a man with serious political influence. More importantly, Caesar himself is already building a network of allies, debtors, and political connections that spans the Mediterranean. When you demand 20 talents for his release, Caesar doesn't just laugh at you, he's genuinely offended. 20 talents for him? He tells you, with the kind of arrogance that should have been your first warning sign, that you've insulted him. The ransom should be 50 talents. 50. He's literally negotiating his own ransom upward because 20 talents isn't worthy of his status. Now, any sane pirate would see this as a gift. The victim wants to pay more? Fantastic. But here's where Caesar starts playing a game you don't even realise has begun. He's not just increasing his ransom, he's establishing his value, his importance, and most critically, he's making sure you understand exactly who you're dealing with. This isn't fear talking. This isn't desperation. This is a man who knows his worth and expects the world to recognise it. While you're celebrating your good fortune and sending word to Rome about the 50-talent ransom, Caesar is studying you. He's learning your routines, memorising your faces, noting your defences. He's treating this kidnapping like a military intelligence gathering operation, because that's exactly what it is. Every conversation, every shared meal, every moment of casual interaction is Caesar building a dossier on every single person involved in his capture. And here's the truly chilling part. Caesar isn't planning his escape. He's planning your execution. While you think you're holding him prisoner, he's already decided that every single one of you is going to die. Not eventually. Not if you cross him, you're all dead men walking, and the only question is how long it takes for the sentence to be carried out. But you don't know any of this yet. From your perspective, things are going remarkably well. Your prisoner is oddly friendly, almost companionable. He jokes with your crew, participates in conversations, even offers suggestions for improving your camp's defences. He tells stories, shares meals, and generally acts more like a guest than a hostage. You start to think maybe this Caesar fellow isn't so bad after all. This is your second fatal mistake. You're confusing Caesar's intelligence for friendship. Every smile, every shared laugh, every moment of apparent camaraderie is Caesar manipulating you. He's not being friendly because he likes you. He's being friendly because it serves his purpose. He needs you to let your guard down. He needs you to see him as a person rather than a threat. Most importantly, he needs you to trust him enough to give him the freedom of movement he'll need when the time comes. Caesar has already sent word to his friends in Rome, not just about the ransom, but about his situation. He's not calling for help, he's calling for witnesses. He wants people to know exactly where he is and exactly who's holding him. Because when this is over, when the ransom is paid and he's released, he wants there to be absolutely no confusion about who is responsible for his humiliation. Meanwhile, you're making plans for your future wealth. 50 talents is enough to retire on, maybe buy a villa somewhere far from the sea, You're already imagining the comfortable life you'll lead once this business is concluded. Your crew is talking about their shares, making plans for their own small fortunes. Everyone's in a good mood because everyone thinks they've struck it rich. But Caesar is making different plans. He's already decided that piracy in this region is going to end. Not just your crew, not just your operation, but all of it. He's going to use his kidnapping as justification for a complete purge of pirate activity throughout the Eastern Mediterranean. He's turning his personal humiliation into a mandate for genocide, and you've given him the perfect excuse. The ransom negotiations are proceeding smoothly. Caesar's friends in Rome are raising the money, and you're receiving regular updates on their progress. Everything seems to be going according to plan. Your prisoner remains friendly and cooperative. Your crew is excited about their upcoming payday, and your hideout remains secure from Roman interference. You couldn't ask for a better kidnapping, except you're not just holding Julius Caesar prisoner, you're giving him a masterclass in your operation. He's learning your supply routes, your communication methods, your defensive strategies. He's noting which crew members are leaders and which are followers. He's identifying your allies, your contacts, your entire network. You think you're keeping him contained, but you're actually giving him everything he needs to destroy you. The most terrifying part isn't what Caesar is planning to do to you personally. It's the systematic, methodical way he's approaching the problem. This isn't going to be a hot-blooded revenge killing. This is going to be a calculated military operation designed to eliminate piracy as a viable career choice in your part of the world. Caesar isn't just planning to kill you. He's planning to make an example of you that will terrify pirates for generations. And still, you have no idea what's coming. From your perspective, you're in control. You have the hostage, you're getting the ransom, and everything is proceeding smoothly. Caesar seems almost grateful for your hospitality. He's even started giving you advice about improving your defences, suggestions you're seriously considering implementing. After all, who knows Roman military tactics better than a Roman? This is the moment when you should be most afraid, when your prisoner starts helping you improve your security. Because Caesar isn't trying to help you. He's probing for weaknesses while appearing helpful. Every suggestion he makes is designed to reveal something about your current capabilities. He's conducting a security assessment while pretending to be your friend. The ransom money is almost ready. Your contacts in Rome report that Caesar's friends have raised the 50 talents and are preparing to deliver them to the agreed location. You're days away from the biggest score of your career. Your crew is already planning their celebration, and you're thinking about which villa you want to buy with your share of the profits. Everything is perfect, except Julius Caesar is about to teach you that there are some people you simply cannot kidnap and expect to walk away from. There are some humiliations that demand not just revenge, but total annihilation of everyone responsible. And you're about to discover that the friendly young Roman you've been chatting with over dinner is one of the most dangerous men alive. The payment is scheduled to arrive tomorrow, and you've already made arrangements for Caesar's release. A simple exchange at a neutral location, money for the prisoner, and everyone goes their separate ways. You've even started to feel a little fond of your captive. He's been excellent company, and you're almost sorry to see him go. You have no idea that Caesar has already written your death sentence. You have no idea that Roman ships are already moving into position. You have no idea that the moment Caesar regains his freedom, every single person involved in his kidnapping becomes a target for elimination. Most importantly, you have no idea that kidnapping Julius Caesar wasn't the score of a lifetime. It was the last mistake you'll ever make. Tomorrow arrives with perfect Mediterranean weather, the kind of day that makes you grateful to be alive and free on the open sea. Your crew is in high spirits, joking and making plans for their newfound wealth. The ransom exchange is set for midday at a small island halfway between your hideout and the Roman mainland. It's a location you've used before, neutral territory, where both sides can approach safely and complete their business without treachery. You've already prepared Caesar for his release. His belongings have been gathered, his travelling companions made ready, and arrangements finalised for the handover. He seems genuinely pleased with how smoothly everything has proceeded, complimenting your professionalism and even suggesting you might work together again in the future. The man has an odd sense of humour, you think, but you appreciate his good nature about the whole affair. What you don't realise is that Caesar's cheerful demeanour masks the cold calculation of a predator who has been studying his prey for weeks. Every friendly conversation has been an interrogation. Every shared meal has been reconnaissance. Every moment of apparent camaraderie has been Caesar gathering intelligence for the systematic destruction he's planning to unleash upon you and everyone you've ever worked with. The exchange goes exactly as planned. Your small fleet arrives at the agreed location, precisely at midday, and Caesar's representatives are already waiting with the ransom money. 50 talents of silver, more wealth than most men see in several lifetimes. The Romans seem nervous, eager to complete the transaction and recover their friend. You can't blame them. Dealing with pirates is dangerous business, and they clearly want this over with as quickly as possible. Caesar himself is in excellent spirits during the final negotiations. He jokes with both sides, compliments your crew on their seamanship, and even suggests improvements to your ransom collection process for future operations. The man is either completely insane or utterly fearless, and you're beginning to suspect it might be both. No normal person responds to kidnapping by offering business advice to their captors. The money changes hands, the prisoner is released, and everyone exchanges pleasantries like this was a perfectly normal commercial transaction. Caesar even shakes your hand, looks you directly in the eye, and tells you he's enjoyed your hospitality. He mentions almost casually that he hopes to return the favour someday soon. You interpret this as empty politeness, the kind of thing people say when parting company. You should have recognised it as a promise. As the Roman ships disappear over the horizon, you and your crew celebrate your incredible good fortune. 50 talents divided among your men makes everyone wealthy beyond their wildest dreams. You're already planning your retirement, thinking about that villa in some peaceful coastal town where you can live out your days in comfort and security. Your days of piracy are over. You've made your fortune, and now it's time to enjoy it. But even as you're dividing the silver and making plans for your future, Julius Caesar is already putting his revenge into motion. The moment his feet touched Roman soil, he began issuing orders, calling in favours, and mobilising resources. Within hours of his release, messages are racing across the Mediterranean to every Roman commander, every allied king, every merchant with ships and men who owe Caesar their loyalty. You see, what you still don't understand is that kidnapping Caesar wasn't just a crime against one man. It was an insult to Rome itself, a challenge to Roman authority that demands the most severe response possible. Caesar has convinced the Senate that allowing pirates to operate with impunity in Roman waters represents an existential threat to the Republic. Your little kidnapping scheme has just become the justification for a massive military campaign. The Roman response is swift and overwhelming. Within days, warships are converging on your region from every major port in the eastern Mediterranean. These aren't the usual patrol vessels you've been avoiding for years. These are proper war galleys, fast and heavily armed, commanded by officers who've been given explicit orders to take no prisoners. Caesar has turned your kidnapping into a holy war against piracy itself. Your network of contacts and informants starts going silent. The merchants who used to tip you off about valuable cargo stop sending messages. The corrupt officials who warned you about naval patrols disappear or suddenly become unavailable. Even the local populations who used to trade with you and provide supplies begin shutting their doors. It's as if the entire region has turned against you overnight. But you don't realize any of this yet. You're still celebrating your success, still planning your comfortable retirement. Your crew has scattered to various ports to spend their shares of the ransom money, and you're enjoying a few days of peace at your hidden base. The silver feels good in your hands, and the future looks bright. You've pulled off the perfect crime, and now you're going to enjoy the rewards. Caesar, meanwhile, has been appointed to a special command with extraordinary powers to eliminate piracy in the eastern Mediterranean. This isn't just a military assignment, it's a personal vendetta dressed up as official policy, and Caesar has convinced Rome's most powerful men to fund his revenge with the full resources of the state. He's not just coming for you, he's coming for every pirate, every base, every ship, every person who's ever supported piracy in your waters. The first sign that something has gone wrong comes when one of your lookouts reports unusual naval activity on the horizon. More ships than normal, moving in coordinated patterns, conducting what looks like systematic searches of every island and cove in the region. You're not immediately concerned. Roman patrols are nothing new, and your base has remained hidden for years. You've weathered military sweeps before. But this isn't a normal patrol. These are hunters, and they're not just looking for pirates. They're looking for you specifically. Caesar has provided them with detailed intelligence about your operation. Intelligence he gathered during his weeks as your prisoner. He knows your hideouts, your routines, your escape routes, your allies. Every piece of information you casually shared with your friendly captive has become a weapon pointed directly at your heart. Your first real indication of the scope of what's coming arrives with a refugee ship, a pirate vessel fleeing from waters to the south. The survivors tell a horrifying story of coordinated attacks, of Roman forces appearing everywhere simultaneously, of pirate bases that had operated for decades being overrun and burned in a single day. They speak of crucifixions, of mass executions, of entire crews being wiped out without mercy or quarter. The refugees describe Roman commanders who seem to know exactly where to find every pirate stronghold, who move with the precision of men following detailed intelligence reports. They talk about a young Roman officer who personally oversees the executions, a man who speaks to captured pirates like he knows them, like he's been planning their deaths for months. The survivors can't remember his name, but their description sends ice through your veins. It sounds exactly like your former prisoner. You finally begin to understand the magnitude of your mistake. This isn't random bad luck or increased Roman naval activity. This is a systematic campaign of extermination, and you're the primary target. Every friendly conversation with Caesar, every shared meal, every moment when you thought you were bonding with your captive was actually Caesar studying you, learning everything he needed to destroy not just you, but your entire way of life. The realization hits you like a physical blow. You haven't been celebrating the score of a lifetime. You've been spending your last days in freedom. The silver you've been counting and planning to spend is blood money, payment for your own execution. Caesar didn't just endure his kidnapping. He used it, turned it into the perfect justification for genocide against your people. Your crew starts trickling back to base with increasingly disturbing reports. Ports that used to welcome pirates are now swarming with Roman soldiers. Taverns where pirates used to gather information and recruit crew members have been raided and their owners arrested. The entire infrastructure that supported piracy in your region is being systematically dismantled, and everyone associated with it is being hunted down and killed. But the most chilling reports come from pirates who managed to escape Roman raids on other bases. They describe a young Roman commander who seems to take personal pleasure in the executions, who speaks to condemned pirates like he's settling old debts. He knows details about pirate operations that no Roman should know, intimate knowledge of how pirate crews operate, where they hide, how they think. The survivors all tell the same story. This Roman has lived among pirates, learned their ways, and now he's using that knowledge to destroy them. The net is closing around you with terrifying speed. Roman ships are systematically checking every island, every cove, every possible hiding place in your waters. They're not just conducting random searches, they're following a methodical plan, moving from location to location with the precision of men who know exactly where they're going. Your secret hideout isn't secret anymore. Caesar gave them a map drawn from memory during those weeks when you thought he was your harmless, friendly prisoner. You order your remaining crew to prepare for immediate departure. The base that has sheltered you for years must be abandoned. Everything you've built, every improvement you've made to your fortifications, every carefully hidden supply cache must be left behind. You're about to become a refugee in your own waters, hunted by an enemy who knows you better than you know yourself. But even as you're preparing to flee, you know it's probably too late. Caesar has had weeks to plan this operation, weeks to position his forces and gather intelligence. He's not just hunting you, he's anticipated your every possible move, prepared for every contingency, closed off every escape route. You're not running towards safety, you're running toward the execution ground. Caesar has prepared for you. The irony is crushing. You thought you'd captured Julius Caesar. In reality, Caesar had captured you. From the moment he stepped aboard your ship, you were his prisoner. Every day you held him was another day he studied your weaknesses, gathered intelligence, and planned your destruction. The ransom you collected wasn't payment for his freedom. It was Caesar buying time to arrange your death sentence. As you frantically load your remaining supplies onto your fastest ship, the true horror of your situation becomes crystal clear. This isn't just military action. This is personal vengeance executed with the precision of a master strategist. Caesar has turned your own success against you, used your moment of triumph as the foundation for your complete annihilation. Every talent of silver you collected has become a nail in your coffin. Every day you held him hostage. Another day he spent planning your systematic destruction. Your hands shake as you secure the last of your possessions. The silver that felt so heavy and satisfying just days ago now feels like chains around your neck. You can't spend wealth if you're dead, and every Roman ship on the horizon brings you closer to that inevitability. The comfortable retirement you'd been planning has transformed into a desperate flight for survival, and even that seems increasingly unlikely. The wind picks up as you prepare to abandon the only safe haven you've known for years. Your crew moves with the urgent efficiency of men who understand. They're fleeing for their lives. But there's something else in their eyes now, something that wasn't there during the celebration. Fear, yes, but also the dawning realization that they've been outplayed by a master. The jovial young Roman who shared their meals and laughed at their jokes has revealed himself to be the most dangerous enemy they've ever faced. You cast off from your hidden harbour just as the sun begins to set, hoping darkness will provide some protection from the Roman hunters. But even as you sail into the growing twilight, you know that Caesar has already anticipated this move. He's had weeks to study your patterns, your preferences, your methods of operation. Every choice you make now is a choice he's already predicted and prepared for. The Mediterranean night offers little comfort. Every shadow could hide a Roman galley. Every distant light could signal your discovery. Your lookouts strain their eyes scanning the horizon, but you know it's probably futile. Caesar's forces aren't just randomly searching anymore. They're executing a carefully planned operation designed to eliminate every possible escape route. You're not evading capture. You're following a script Caesar wrote during those weeks when you thought you were in control. By dawn, your worst fears are confirmed. Roman ships appear on multiple horizons, moving in coordinated patterns that speak of careful planning and superior intelligence. These aren't chance encounters or random patrols. These are hunters who know exactly where their prey is heading, who've been positioned to intercept you no matter which direction you choose. Caesar has turned the entire Mediterranean into a trap, and you've sailed directly into it. Your crew looks to you for orders, but what orders can you give? Run north and encounter the Roman squadron that's clearly been positioned there for days. Flee south and sail into the arms of another coordinated fleet. Turn east or west and find more of the same. Every option leads to the same destination. Caesar has transformed the sea itself into an execution chamber, and you're the guest of honour. The realization that you're completely surrounded brings a strange kind of clarity. You've spent your entire career as a pirate believing that you were in control, that you were the predator hunting helpless prey. But Caesar has shown you what a real predator looks like. While you were playing at being dangerous, he was demonstrating genuine lethality. The difference between you and him isn't just skill or intelligence, it's the fundamental understanding of how power actually works. You think back to those conversations during his captivity, searching for clues you missed, warnings you ignored, but there weren't any. And that's what makes Caesar so terrifying. He didn't reveal his true nature because he didn't need to. A wolf doesn't need to growl at sheep to be dangerous. Caesar's friendly demeanour wasn't deception. It was confidence. The confidence of a man who knew the outcome of this game before it even began. The Roman ships are closing now. moving with the practiced coordination of a military force that's been drilling for this exact scenario. You can see the discipline in their formations, the way they maintain perfect spacing while gradually tightening the noose around your position. This isn't improvised tactics. This is the execution of a plan that's been rehearsed and refined until it's flawless. Your crew suggests fighting, going down in a blaze of glory rather than surrendering to certain execution. It's a tempting thought, the kind of dramatic ending that would make for good stories in taverns and brothels across the Mediterranean. But you know it's exactly what Caesar expects, probably what he's hoping for. A violent end would justify everything he's done, validate his characterization of pirates as savage criminals who deserve no mercy. Instead, you do something that surprises even yourself. You order your crew to surrender, not because you have any hope of survival, but because you finally understand the game Caesar has been playing. He wants you to fight because it makes the story cleaner, more heroic. A young Roman aristocrat bravely confronting violent criminals and bringing them to justice. But if you surrender peacefully, if you face your execution with dignity, you rob him of that narrative. The Roman galleys surround your vessel with professional efficiency. Marines board your ship with the calm competence of men who've done this many times before. There's no brutality, no unnecessary violence. These are soldiers following orders, not vengeful killers indulging their bloodlust. The true killer is the young man standing on the deck of the lead galley, watching your capture with the satisfied expression of someone whose careful planning has come to fruition. Julius Caesar looks exactly the same as he did during his captivity, but now you see him clearly for the first time. The friendly prisoner who joked with your crew and offered tactical advice is gone, replaced by something cold and calculating and utterly without mercy. This is the real Caesar, the man who will one day cross the Rubicon and remake the Roman world according to his vision. You've had the privilege of seeing him before history knew his name, and the terror of learning what that privilege costs. He doesn't speak to you during the transfer to his ship. There's nothing to say. This isn't about justice or law or even revenge in any personal sense. This is about establishing precedent, about sending a message to every pirate in the Mediterranean that some people simply cannot be touched without consequence. You're not a person to Caesar anymore. You're an example, a cautionary tale he's writing in blood and crucifixion wood. The journey to your execution site takes 3 days. 3 days during which you're treated with the same professional courtesy Caesar showed during his captivity. You're fed regularly, given clean water, allowed to rest. It's not kindness. It's the same calculated behaviour Caesar demonstrated as your prisoner, designed to serve his purposes rather than yours. A healthy, well-treated prisoner makes for better theatre when the time comes for the final act. You spend those days thinking about the choices that led you here, the moment when a simple kidnapping transformed into a death sentence. But the more you consider it, the more you realise there was never any other outcome possible. From the instant you laid hands on Julius Caesar, your fate was sealed. The only variable was how long it would take for the sentence to be carried out. Other pirates captured in the sweep are brought aboard during the journey, men whose crews and bases have been systematically eliminated by Caesar's forces. They tell stories of precision raids, of Roman commanders who seem to know exactly where to strike for maximum effect. The entire pirate network in your region has been dismantled in a matter of weeks, centuries of accumulated knowledge and tradition wiped out by one man's methodical planning. The scope of Caesar's operation becomes clear as more prisoners arrive. This isn't just about you or even your crew. Caesar has used your kidnapping as justification for the complete elimination of piracy in the Eastern Mediterranean. Every base, every safe harbour, every corrupt official who ever aided pirates has been identified and eliminated. The infrastructure that supported your way of life has been systematically destroyed, and everyone associated with it marked for death. You begin to understand that you're witnessing something historically significant, the end of an era. Piracy will continue in other parts of the Mediterranean, but not here, not in these waters. Caesar has demonstrated that Rome possesses both the will and the capability to eliminate piracy when it chooses to do so. Your kidnapping has provided the political justification, and your execution will provide the dramatic conclusion that ensures no one forgets the lesson. The irony is almost unbearable. You thought you were exploiting Roman weakness, taking advantage of their inability to control the seas, but you were actually demonstrating Roman strength, giving them the perfect opportunity to showcase their power when properly motivated. Caesar has turned your moment of triumph into Rome's moment of glory, your success into his political capital. On the final day of the journey, Caesar speaks to you for the first time since your capture. Not threats or gloating, but a simple statement of fact. He tells you that your execution will be public, that representatives from every major city in the region have been invited to witness it. You're not just dying, you're dying as theatre, as a performance designed to communicate Roman power to anyone who might question it. He explains with the same casual tone he used during your friendly conversations that crucifixion has been chosen specifically for its symbolic value. It's a death reserved for slaves and criminals, designed to humiliate as well as kill. But more importantly, it's a death that takes time, hours during which observers can contemplate the consequences of crossing Rome. Your suffering will be the message, and your death will be the signature. The worst part isn't the prospect of physical pain, though that's certainly terrifying enough. The worst part is the realization that everything you thought you knew about yourself was wrong. You believed you were dangerous, feared, in control of your destiny. But Caesar has revealed you to be nothing more than a bit player in someone else's story. A minor character whose only purpose is to illustrate the protagonist's power. As the Roman fleet approaches the coast where your execution will take place, you can see crowds gathering on the shore. Word has spread throughout the region, and people are coming to witness the end of the pirate era. Some are probably former victims seeking satisfaction, others simply curious about the spectacle, but all of them will leave with the same understanding. Rome's patience has limits, and exceeding those limits carries consequences that no amount of silver can purchase. The ships anchor in clear view of the assembled crowd, close enough for everyone to see, but far enough to prevent any possibility of rescue or interference. Caesar has choreographed every detail of this final performance, from the positioning of the vessels to the timing of the execution. Nothing is left to chance, because chance is what allowed you to capture him in the first place. And Caesar never makes the same mistake twice. You're transferred to a smaller boat for the final journey to shore, surrounded by Roman marines whose professional demeanour never wavers. These men aren't your enemies in any personal sense. They're instruments of Roman will, extensions of Caesar's planning, tools being used to write a message in blood that will be remembered for generations. Your death isn't personal, it's policy. As the boat approaches the beach where the crosses are already waiting, you understand that you're about to become part of history, not as a hero or a villain, but as an object lesson, a cautionary tale about the dangers of underestimating Roman power and Caesar's personal resolve. Your name will be forgotten, but your death will be remembered as the moment when piracy in the Eastern Mediterranean came to an end. The crowd parts as you're escorted up the beach, their faces showing a mixture of curiosity, satisfaction, and fear. They're witnessing the exercise of imperial power, the demonstration that Rome's authority extends to every corner of the Mediterranean. But they're also seeing what happens to those who challenge that authority, and the lesson isn't lost on anyone present. Julius Caesar follows behind, not gloating or threatening, but simply observing the culmination of his carefully laid plans. This is his moment of triumph, but he wears it with the same casual confidence he displayed during his captivity. To him, this outcome was never in doubt. The only question was how long it would take to arrange the proper theatre for its execution. The crosses stand silhouetted against the Mediterranean sky, stark reminders of Roman justice and Caesar's personal vengeance. In a few hours, you'll be hanging from one of them, your life slowly ebbing away while observers contemplate the wisdom of respecting Roman authority. But even as you face that horrible prospect, you can't help but admire the completeness of Caesar's victory. He didn't just defeat you, he eliminated you so thoroughly that it's as if you never existed. Your bases are destroyed, your crew scattered or dead, your network dismantled. The very possibility of piracy in these waters has been erased, replaced by Roman order and Caesar's growing reputation. You thought you had captured a prisoner, but Caesar had captured an entire way of life and sentenced it to extinction. The crosses loom before you now, rough-hewn wood that will become your final throne. But as you're forced to your knees in the sand, watching Roman soldiers prepare the instruments of your execution, something even more chilling becomes apparent. This isn't just about killing you and your fellow pirates. Caesar has turned your deaths into a recruitment tool, a demonstration of Roman efficiency that will inspire loyalty and terror in equal measure. Local officials from every major city in the region have gathered to witness this spectacle. They're not here out of morbid curiosity. They're here because Caesar invited them, because he wants them to return to their communities with a very specific message. Rome remembers its friends and annihilates its enemies. The choice of which category you fall into is entirely yours, but the consequences of that choice are absolute and non-negotiable. You can see it in their faces as they watch the preparations. These are men who have spent years walking a careful line between Roman authority and local independence. They've paid their taxes, offered their nominal loyalty, but always kept one eye on the horizon for better opportunities. Caesar's methodical destruction of piracy in their waters has just reminded them that Rome's patience, while considerable, is not infinite. As the first of your crew members is dragged to his cross, you realise that Caesar has solved multiple problems with a single operation. He's eliminated a criminal enterprise, demonstrated Roman naval power, sent a message to potential rebels, and established his own reputation as a commander who gets results. Your kidnapping, which seemed like such a brilliant opportunity just weeks ago, has become the foundation for Caesar's political career. The crowd grows restless as the crucifixions begin. This isn't entertainment in the way gladiatorial games are entertainment. This is education, a practical demonstration of cause and effect that no one present will ever forget. The screams of your dying crew members echo across the water, carrying Caesar's message to every ship within miles. These waters belong to Rome now, and the price of challenging that ownership is measured in blood and suffering. But even as you watch your men die in agony, you can't escape the nagging realization that Caesar orchestrated all of this from the moment he stepped aboard your ship. Every friendly conversation, every shared meal, every moment when you thought you were bonding with your prisoner was actually Caesar gathering the intelligence he needed to destroy not just you, but the entire pirate culture in your region. The Roman soldiers work with professional efficiency, raising crosses with the same methodical precision they use for every other military task. There's no sadism here, no personal cruelty. These men are following orders, executing a plan that was designed weeks ago during those pleasant evenings when Caesar seemed so interested in learning about pirate operations. Every question he asked, every detail he encouraged you to share, has now become a tool for your systematic elimination. Your turn approaches with the inevitability of tide and sunset. The Romans have saved you for last, not out of any particular malice, but because Caesar understands theatre. The crowd needs to see the leader suffer most, needs to understand that no one, regardless of their position in the criminal hierarchy, is beyond Roman reach. Your prolonged death will be the exclamation point on a message written in the blood of your entire crew. As they bind your arms and lift you toward the waiting cross, you catch sight of Caesar standing among the Roman officials. He's not watching your suffering with satisfaction or gloating over his victory. Instead, he's observing the crowd, studying their reactions, measuring the effectiveness of his demonstration. Even now, even at the moment of your death, you're nothing more than a tool in his hands, a means to an end that extends far beyond personal revenge. The pain begins immediately as the nails pierce your wrists, but it's nothing compared to the psychological torment of understanding how completely you've been outmaneuvered. Every advantage you thought you possessed, every piece of leverage you believed you held, has been turned against you with surgical precision. Caesar didn't just defeat you in combat, he made you complicit in your own destruction, using your hospitality and friendliness to gather the intelligence necessary for your elimination. Hanging there in the Mediterranean sun, feeling your strength slowly ebb away, you finally comprehend the true scope of what you've encountered. This isn't just a young Roman with political connections and military training. This is something far more dangerous, a mind that operates on multiple levels simultaneously, planning moves and counter-moves while maintaining perfect emotional control. The friendly prisoner who shared your meals and laughed at your jokes was always a predator, just one patient enough to study his prey before striking. The crowd below begins to disperse as the afternoon heat becomes oppressive, but their lesson has been thoroughly learned. Representatives from every major settlement in the region are already preparing to carry Caesar's message back to their communities. Piracy is no longer a viable career option in these waters. Roman authority is absolute, and challenging it carries consequences that no amount of silver can ameliorate. But Caesar's demonstration extends beyond simple deterrence. He's also establishing his credentials as a commander who can identify problems and solve them permanently. The systematic elimination of piracy in the Eastern Mediterranean isn't just about clearing trade routes. It's about showcasing the kind of decisive leadership that Rome's political elite values and rewards. Your death is simultaneously justice, deterrence, and career advancement for the man who orchestrated it. Hours pass with agonizing slowness as your body weakens and your vision blurs. The physical pain is extraordinary, but it's overshadowed by the intellectual humiliation of recognizing how thoroughly you've been manipulated. Every moment of apparent friendship with Caesar was actually an interrogation session. Every piece of information you casually shared has become ammunition in a war you didn't even know you were fighting. The sun begins its descent toward the horizon, painting the Mediterranean in shades of gold and crimson that would be beautiful under different circumstances. Other pirates watching from distant ships will see your silhouettes against the sunset sky and understand that an era has ended. The freewheeling days of Mediterranean piracy are over, replaced by Roman order and the systematic application of imperial will. As consciousness fades in and out, you catch glimpses of Caesar directing the cleanup operations with the same meticulous attention to detail he's shown throughout this entire campaign. Bodies are disposed of efficiently, crosses are dismantled and stored for future use, and the beach is restored to its previous condition. Even in death, you're being managed according to his specifications. Your corpse just another logistics problem to be solved. The most terrifying realization comes in those final moments of clarity before death claims you completely. Caesar has demonstrated that he possesses something far more dangerous than military skill or political connections. He has the ability to think systematically about problems and devise comprehensive solutions that address not just immediate concerns, but long-term strategic objectives. Your kidnapping wasn't just a crime to be punished. It was an opportunity to be exploited for maximum political and military advantage. In your dying moments, you understand that you've encountered a force of nature disguised as a young Roman aristocrat. Caesar's friendly demeanour during his captivity wasn't deception in any conventional sense. It was the confidence of someone who knew the outcome of your confrontation before it began, who understood that your apparent victory was actually the first step in your inevitable destruction. He never needed to threaten you because he never saw you as a genuine threat. The last thing you see before darkness takes you is Caesar walking away from the execution site, already focused on his next objective. Your death, which seems so monumentally important from your perspective, is merely a completed task on his agenda. He's not celebrating or gloating because there's nothing to celebrate. The outcome was predetermined the moment you laid hands on him, and predetermined outcomes don't require celebration. Your body hangs lifeless against the darkening sky as night falls over the Mediterranean, but your death continues to serve Caesar's purposes. Word of the systematic elimination of piracy in the eastern waters spreads throughout the Roman world, enhancing Caesar's reputation as a commander who gets results. Political allies take note of his effectiveness, enemies reconsider their opposition, and the Roman people add another victory to their growing collection of imperial triumphs. The beach where you died returns to its peaceful state within hours, showing no sign of the drama that unfolded there. Fishermen will return to their nets, merchants will resume their trading, and travellers will pass through without ever knowing that the age of piracy ended on this particular stretch of sand. Caesar has achieved the perfect victory, one that eliminates the problem so completely that it's as if the problem never existed. But the ripple effects of your death extend far beyond the immediate elimination of piracy. Every Roman official who witnessed your execution carries away a new understanding of what's possible when imperial authority is applied with sufficient intelligence and determination. Caesar has provided them with a template for solving problems that seemed intractable, a demonstration that careful planning and systematic execution can overcome any challenge. More importantly, Caesar has established himself as someone who understands the relationship between personal honour and political power. Your kidnapping was a personal insult that demanded personal satisfaction, but Caesar transformed that private grievance into public policy that benefited the entire Roman state. He's shown that individual ambition and collective good can be aligned when approached with sufficient sophistication. The pirates who managed to escape Caesar's systematic purge carry their own lessons to other parts of the Mediterranean. They speak in hushed tones about the young Roman who turned a simple kidnapping into a campaign of extermination, who used friendship and hospitality as weapons more effective than any sword or spear. Their stories ensure that Caesar's reputation spreads even to places where Roman authority doesn't directly reach. Years later, when Caesar crosses the Rubicon and plunges Rome into civil war, men will remember the systematic efficiency with which he eliminated Mediterranean piracy. They'll recall the way he turned apparent weakness into overwhelming strength, how he used enemy hospitality to gather the intelligence necessary for enemy destruction. The lessons of your death will inform the strategies he uses to conquer Gaul, defeat Pompey, and ultimately transform the Roman Republic into the Roman Empire. But all of that lies in the future, invisible to the corpse hanging from a cross on a beach in Asia Minor. In the present moment, your death serves its immediate purpose as the final punctuation mark on Caesar's message to the Mediterranean world. The age of piracy is over, Roman authority is absolute, and Julius Caesar is the man who made both of those facts undeniably clear. The merchant ships that resume their routes through waters, now cleared of pirates, carry more than goods and passengers. They carry the story of how a young Roman turned apparent defeat into total victory, how careful planning and patient execution can overcome any obstacle. Caesar's name begins to spread throughout the Roman world, attached to tales of the man who eliminated piracy not through brute force, but through superior intelligence and systematic application of power. Your kidnapping, which began as what seemed like the score of a lifetime, has become the foundation for one of the most remarkable political careers in human history. Every talent of silver you extracted as ransom has been repaid 1,000-fold in political capital that Caesar will use to reshape the known world. The friendly young prisoner who shared your meals and laughed at your jokes has revealed himself to be one of the most dangerous men who ever lived. And your death is just the opening chapter in a story that will end with the transformation of the Roman Republic into an empire that will endure for centuries. The crosses stand empty now, their grim purpose served, but the message they delivered echoes across the Mediterranean and through history itself. Some people cannot be kidnapped without consequence. Some insults demand not just satisfaction, but total annihilation of everyone responsible. And some young Romans named Julius Caesar possessed the intelligence, patience, and ruthless determination necessary to turn personal humiliation into imperial triumph. Your story ends here, on this beach, in this moment, with your life ebbing away under stars that have witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. But Caesar's story is just beginning, and your death has provided him with the reputation and political capital necessary to embark on the series of conquests that will make him the most famous Roman who ever lived. You thought you had captured a prisoner, but Caesar had captured something far more valuable than any individual life. He had captured the attention of history itself, and he used your kidnapping as the opening move in a game that would reshape the ancient world. The waves wash against the shore with the same rhythm they've maintained for millennia, indifferent to the human drama that has just concluded on their margins. Tomorrow will bring new ships, new merchants, new travellers, all of them benefiting from the safety that Caesar's systematic elimination of piracy has purchased with your blood. The Mediterranean will continue to serve as the highway of civilization, but now it will do so under the absolute authority of Rome and the growing legend of the young man who turned a kidnapping into a campaign of extermination. In the years that followed, as Caesar's legend grew and his name became synonymous with power itself, the Mediterranean world would look back on your execution as the moment everything changed. But there's a darker truth buried beneath the official narratives and historical accounts. Your death wasn't just the end of piracy in the eastern waters. It was Caesar's first systematic demonstration of something far more terrifying than military prowess or political cunning. You see, what makes Caesar truly dangerous isn't his intelligence or his strategic thinking, though both are formidable. It's his complete understanding of human psychology and his willingness to exploit that understanding without any moral constraints whatsoever. During those weeks when you thought he was your prisoner, Caesar wasn't just gathering intelligence about your operations. He was conducting a psychological experiment, studying how criminals think, how they justify their actions, how they bond with their victims. Every laugh you shared, every story you told, every moment when you let your guard down, was Caesar building a profile not just of you, but of criminal psychology in general. He was learning how pirates operate, yes, but more importantly, he was learning how to manipulate people who live outside the law. That knowledge will serve him well in the years to come, when he needs to understand the motivations of barbarian chieftains in Gaul, rival generals in civil war, and senators plotting his assassination. The systematic nature of his revenge reveals something chilling about Caesar's character. This wasn't hot-blooded retaliation or even calculated political maneuvering. This was clinical elimination, the application of scientific method to the problem of human disposal. Caesar approached your destruction with the same methodical precision a physician might use to remove a tumour, carefully cutting away not just the diseased tissue, but everything connected to it. Your crew members who survived the initial purge found themselves hunted across the Mediterranean by agents who seemed to know their every habit, every safe house, every person they might turn to for help. Caesar had used his weeks of captivity to map your entire network, and now he was systematically destroying every node of that network with surgical precision. Men who had never been within 100 miles of your kidnapping operation found themselves crucified simply because Caesar's intelligence identified them as potential threats. The merchant who occasionally sold you supplies, executed. The tavern keeper, who sometimes passed along information about Roman ship movements, crucified. The corrupt harbour master, who warned you about naval patrols, found floating in his own harbour with his throat cut. Caesar wasn't just eliminating pirates, he was eradicating the entire ecosystem that supported piracy, ensuring that even if some pirates survived, they would have no infrastructure to rely on. But the most insidious part of Caesar's campaign wasn't the violence itself. It was the way he turned your own people against each other. Captured pirates were offered clemency in exchange for information about their colleagues. Men who had sailed together for years suddenly found themselves betraying lifelong friends to save their own necks. Caesar had discovered that honour among thieves was a luxury that disappeared quickly when the alternative was crucifixion. The psychological warfare was as devastating as the physical campaign. Rumours spread through pirate communities that Caesar had supernatural abilities, that he could see into men's souls and predict their every move. Some claimed he had made deals with dark gods during his captivity, trading his humanity for otherworldly knowledge. The truth was far more frightening than any supernatural explanation. Caesar simply understood people better than they understood themselves. Local populations who had once tolerated or even supported pirate activities suddenly became enthusiastic collaborators in their elimination. Caesar had convinced them that piracy wasn't just a criminal enterprise, but an existential threat to civilization itself. Your kidnapping became proof that pirates would stop at nothing, that they represented chaos incarnate, threatening the ordered world Rome had built. Every citizen who helped hunt down surviving pirates was striking a blow for civilization against barbarism. The speed with which public opinion shifted reveals Caesar's mastery of propaganda and narrative control. Within months of your execution, the same people who had once traded with pirates and profited from their activities were competing to demonstrate their loyalty to Rome by reporting suspicious activities. Caesar had transformed you from successful criminals into enemies of humanity itself, and that transformation made your complete elimination not just acceptable, but morally necessary. Roman historians would later write about the piracy campaign as a brilliant military operation, but they missed the deeper significance. Caesar had demonstrated that he could reshape reality itself through careful manipulation of perception and narrative. He had taken a personal humiliation and transformed it into a mandate for genocide, then convinced the entire Mediterranean world that this genocide was not only justified, but heroic. The techniques Caesar developed during his anti-piracy campaign would serve him well in Gaul, where he would use similar methods to divide and conquer tribal coalitions that had resisted Roman expansion for generations. He would identify key relationships within barbarian societies, exploit existing tensions, and turn allies into enemies with surgical precision. The psychological profiles he developed while studying your crew would help him understand how to break the will of entire nations. Years later, when Caesar stands before the Senate and justifies his conquest of Gaul, he will use language remarkably similar to his descriptions of the piracy threat. Barbarians, like pirates, represent chaos threatening civilization. Roman expansion, like the elimination of piracy, is a defensive measure designed to protect the innocent. The techniques for turning a war of aggression into a moral crusade were perfected on the beaches where your crew died screaming. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of Caesar's revenge is how completely it worked. Within a generation, the very concept of piracy in the Eastern Mediterranean had become almost mythical. Children grew up hearing stories about the bad old days when criminals ruled the seas, but those stories seemed as distant and unreal as fairy tales. Caesar had achieved something approaching historical amnesia, erasing not just pirates, but the very memory of piracy as a viable way of life. The thoroughness of this cultural elimination would become a template for Roman imperial policy throughout the Mediterranean. Rebellious populations weren't just conquered, they were psychologically reconstructed. Local customs that conflicted with Roman values weren't just suppressed, they were systematically replaced with Roman alternatives. The identity of conquered peoples was carefully reshaped until resistance became literally unthinkable. Your death, viewed from this perspective, wasn't just an execution. It was a prototype for cultural genocide, a demonstration of how an entire way of life could be eliminated so completely that future generations would struggle to understand how it ever existed. Caesar had discovered that the most effective way to defeat an enemy wasn't to kill them, but to make their existence impossible by destroying the social and economic structures that supported their identity. The pirates who escaped to other parts of the Mediterranean carried with them a terror that went beyond fear of death. They had witnessed the systematic dismantling of their entire culture, the transformation of friends into enemies, the conversion of supporters into hunters. They understood that Caesar represented something fundamentally different from previous Roman commanders, something that threatened not just their lives, but their very conception of reality. These survivors spread stories throughout the pirate networks of the Western Mediterranean, tales that grew more terrifying with each retelling. Caesar became a boogeyman figure, a name whispered in taverns to frighten young pirates into reconsidering their career choices. But these stories also served Caesar's purposes, extending his reputation far beyond the reach of Roman legions, and making his eventual campaigns in Gaul and elsewhere psychologically easier. The economic impact of the piracy elimination was immediate and profound. Trade routes that had been dangerous for decades suddenly became safe, allowing merchant vessels to operate with confidence and efficiency. The cost of goods transported across the Eastern Mediterranean dropped dramatically as the risk premium associated with piracy disappeared. Roman tax revenues increased as commerce flourished in the newly secured waters, but the economic benefits were nothing compared to the political capital Caesar gained from the operation. Roman merchants who had suffered losses to pirates now saw him as their protector. Coastal cities that had paid tribute to pirate chiefs now praised him as their liberator. Allied kings who had struggled with pirate raids in their waters now owed him personal debts of gratitude. Caesar had transformed a humiliating kidnapping into a network of political obligations that would serve him for the rest of his career. The Senate, initially skeptical of giving such broad authority to a relatively young politician, found themselves forced to acknowledge the effectiveness of Caesar's methods. His systematic approach to problem solving, his ability to turn military operations into political triumphs, and his talent for transforming personal grievances into public benefits marked him as a leader worth watching. The piracy campaign became Caesar's audition for greater responsibilities, and he had passed with terrifying competence. Military commanders throughout the Roman world studied Caesar's techniques, trying to understand how he had achieved such complete victory with relatively modest resources. The answer lay not in superior tactics or better equipment, but in Caesar's understanding that warfare was ultimately a psychological endeavour. He had defeated the pirates not by outfighting them, but by making piracy itself psychologically untenable for both practitioners and supporters. The crosses where you and your crew died became pilgrimage sites for Roman officials seeking to understand the source of Caesar's success. They would stand on that beach and try to comprehend how a simple kidnapping had been transformed into a campaign of such systematic brutality that it achieved not just tactical victory, but strategic transformation of an entire region. The answer was always the same. Caesar understood that true power lay not in the ability to destroy enemies, but in the ability to make enemy existence impossible. Local priests began incorporating your executions into their religious narratives, presenting them as divine justice for crimes against the natural order. The gods themselves, according to these new stories, had chosen Caesar as their instrument for eliminating chaos and establishing proper hierarchy. Your deaths became sacred theatre, proof that the universe itself supported Roman authority and punished those who challenged it. The transformation of your executions from historical events into religious mythology reveals the depth of Caesar's understanding of power dynamics. He had recognized that lasting victory required not just the elimination of enemies, but the creation of narratives that made future resistance psychologically impossible. By turning your deaths into divine judgment, he had made piracy not just illegal, but literally blasphemous. Artists and poets throughout the Roman world began celebrating Caesar's victory in increasingly elaborate works that emphasized the moral dimension of his campaign. Pirates became demons in these artistic representations, inhuman monsters whose elimination was a service to all decent people. Caesar appeared as a hero of almost divine stature, a champion of civilization against the forces of chaos and barbarism. These cultural productions served a dual purpose, celebrating Caesar's achievement while simultaneously preparing Roman audiences for his future campaigns. The techniques that worked against pirates would work against barbarians, rebels, and eventually against other Romans who stood in Caesar's way. The artistic celebration of his piracy campaign was actually propaganda preparation for the civil wars that would transform the Republic into the Empire. The speed with which these cultural transformations occurred reveals something disturbing about human nature itself. People were eager to believe that your deaths represented justice rather than revenge, that Caesar's systematic brutality was actually moral necessity. The alternative, recognizing that they lived in a world where personal humiliation could justify genocide, was too psychologically threatening to acknowledge. But Caesar understood this psychological dynamic and exploited it ruthlessly. He gave people a narrative that allowed them to feel good about systematic violence, a story that transformed mass murder into moral triumph. The techniques he developed for managing public perception during the piracy campaign would serve him well when he needed to justify his conquest of Gaul, his crossing of the Rubicon, and his eventual assumption of dictatorial power. Your kidnapping had accomplished something you never intended and could never have imagined. It had provided Caesar with a laboratory for developing the psychological and political techniques that would ultimately destroy the Roman Republic and replace it with an empire. Every method he used to eliminate piracy would be refined and applied on a larger scale as he pursued ever greater ambitions. The irony is almost unbearable. You thought you were exploiting Roman weakness, but you were actually revealing Roman strength. You believed you were taking advantage of imperial neglect, but you were providing the empire with exactly the justification it needed to extend its control more completely than ever before. Your moment of triumph became the catalyst for your culture's extinction and Rome's expansion. Caesar's systematic approach to eliminating piracy would become the template for Roman imperial expansion throughout the Mediterranean and beyond. Identify existing tensions within target populations, exploit those tensions to create internal conflict, present Roman intervention as necessary for peace and order, then eliminate anyone who might threaten that order. The formula was perfected on pirate communities and then applied to entire civilizations. The beaches where you died became training grounds for future Roman commanders, places where young officers could study the practical application of psychological warfare and systematic elimination. Caesar's methods were analysed, refined, and incorporated into standard Roman military doctrine. Your death had become a textbook case in the efficient application of imperial power. But perhaps the most chilling legacy of your execution is how completely it worked. Modern historians struggle to find reliable information about Mediterranean piracy in the 1st century BC because Caesar's campaign eliminated not just pirates, but most records of their existence. The victors didn't just write history, they erased the history of the defeated so thoroughly that their very existence became questionable. Your name, your crew's names, even the location of your base have vanished from historical record. Only the fact of your execution remains, preserved in accounts that celebrate Caesar's triumph rather than documenting your humanity. You have become a footnote in someone else's story, a minor character whose only purpose was to illustrate the protagonist's power and intelligence. The Mediterranean waters where you once sailed free now carry merchant vessels protected by Roman law and patrolled by Roman ships. The islands where pirate bases once flourished now host Roman settlements and trading posts. The very geography of your world has been transformed, reshaped to serve Roman purposes rather than pirate ambitions. Caesar didn't just eliminate piracy, he eliminated the possibility of piracy by reconstructing the entire maritime environment. Trade routes that once provided hunting grounds for pirates now serve as highways for Roman commerce and administration. The same winds that once carried your ships toward merchant prey now fill the sails of Roman galleys, maintaining imperial peace. Even the sea itself has been transformed from a realm of opportunity into an instrument of imperial control. The transformation is so complete that it's difficult to imagine how piracy ever existed in these waters. Caesar's systematic reconstruction of Mediterranean maritime culture has made the pirate way of life not just dangerous, but literally inconceivable to new generations. Children growing up in coastal communities can't imagine a world where criminals ruled the seas because such a world no longer exists in any meaningful sense. Your death marked not just the end of your life, but the end of an entire historical epoch. The age of Mediterranean piracy died with you on that beach, replaced by an age of Roman control, so complete that future historians would struggle to understand how pirates had ever posed a serious threat to imperial authority. Caesar had achieved something approaching historical erasure, eliminating not just enemies, but the memory of enemy existence. The techniques Caesar developed for this historical erasure would serve him well in his future conquests. Gallic tribes that resisted Roman expansion would find their cultures systematically dismantled, their identities reconstructed, their very names forgotten by history. The methods that worked against pirates would work against anyone who stood in Rome's way, and Caesar had proven that complete victory was not just possible, but achievable through careful application of psychological and cultural warfare. Your kidnapping had provided Caesar with something far more valuable than any ransom money could have been. It had given him the opportunity to develop and perfect the techniques that would transform him from a minor Roman politician into the most powerful man in the ancient world. Every method he used to eliminate you and your way of life would be refined and applied on ever larger scales as his ambitions grew. The crosses where you died have long since rotted away, but the message they delivered continues to echo through history. Some people cannot be kidnapped. Some insults cannot be tolerated. Some enemies must be eliminated so completely that their very existence becomes historically questionable. And some young Romans named Julius Caesar possessed the intelligence, patience, and systematic brutality necessary to achieve that level of total victory. Your story ends here in this moment, with your consciousness fading under stars that have witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. But the techniques Caesar developed to eliminate you will outlive both of you, becoming part of the imperial toolkit that Rome will use to conquer and control the known world. You thought you had captured a prisoner, but Caesar had captured something far more valuable than any individual life. He had captured the methodology of empire itself, and your death was just the first successful field test of techniques that would reshape human civilization. The waves continue to wash against the shore with the same rhythm they've maintained since the world began, indifferent to human ambition and human suffering alike. Tomorrow will bring new ships, new merchants, new travellers, all of them benefiting from the safety that your blood has purchased. The Mediterranean will continue to serve as the highway of civilization, but now it will do so under the absolute authority of Rome and the growing legend of the man who turned a kidnapping into the foundation of empire. In the darkness that claims your vision, you can almost hear the sound of distant armies marching, future legions carrying Caesar's methods to the far corners of the earth. Gauls will fall using techniques perfected on pirates. Egyptians will submit to methods developed in your death. Germans will be conquered through applications of psychological warfare first tested on your crew. Your execution wasn't just the end of your life. It was the beginning of a new age of systematic imperial domination, and Caesar had used your kidnapping as the blueprint for conquering the world. The last thing you understand before death takes you completely is that you've been present at the birth of something terrible and magnificent. You've witnessed the moment when personal revenge transformed into imperial methodology, when individual brilliance evolved into systematic oppression. Caesar's response to your kidnapping will echo through centuries, a template for how empires eliminate Not just enemies, but the very possibility of resistance. Your body grows cold under stars that will shine down on Caesar's triumphs in Gaul, his crossing of the Rubicon, his transformation of the Republic into the Empire. The techniques he perfected while eliminating you will serve him well in all of these endeavours, refined and expanded until they become the standard operating procedures of imperial power. You thought you were just another pirate making one more raid, but you had actually become the unwitting architect of your own cultural extinction and the unwilling midwife to the birth of empire itself. The silence that follows your final breath carries more weight than all the silver you ever stole, but your death is just the opening movement in a symphony of destruction that will play across the Mediterranean for generations. Caesar stands on that beach, watching your corpse sway in the evening breeze, and he's already 3 moves ahead of everyone else in the game. Because here's what nobody else understands yet. Caesar hasn't just eliminated a pirate crew, he's conducted a masterclass in power projection, and every Roman official watching has just received an education in how to transform personal grievance into imperial policy. They're not just witnessing an execution, they're attending a seminar on the efficient application of systematic violence. The local governors and administrators who came to watch your death return to their provinces with a new understanding of what's possible when Roman authority is properly motivated. They've seen how a single kidnapping can justify the complete elimination of an entire criminal culture. More importantly, they've learned that the techniques Caesar used against pirates can be adapted for any population that needs correction. Within months, similar campaigns begin sprouting across the Roman world. Bandit groups that have operated for decades suddenly find themselves facing systematic elimination. Rebel tribes that have resisted Roman expansion discover that their traditional tactics no longer work against enemies who understand psychological warfare. Criminal organizations that have corrupted local officials face coordinated attacks that seem to anticipate their every move. But the real genius of Caesar's approach becomes apparent in the years that follow. He's not just eliminated pirates, he's created a new model for imperial expansion, one that transforms military conquest into moral crusade. Every future campaign will follow the same pattern. Identify a threat to Roman civilization. Demonstrate that threat's inherent evil through careful propaganda. Then eliminate that threat with such systematic brutality that resistance becomes psychologically impossible. The Gallic tribes that Caesar will soon face have no idea what's coming. They think they're dealing with just another Roman general seeking glory and plunder. They have no conception that they're about to encounter a man who has perfected the art of cultural elimination, who understands that true victory requires not just defeating enemies, but making enemy existence impossible. Caesar's commentaries on the Gallic Wars, written years later, will use language remarkably similar to his descriptions of the piracy threat. Barbarians, like pirates, represent chaos threatening civilization. Roman expansion, like the elimination of piracy, is a defensive measure designed to protect the innocent. The moral framework that justified your genocide will be expanded to justify the conquest of entire continents. But there's something even more sinister at work here. Caesar has discovered that people want to believe in moral justifications for systematic violence. They're eager to transform mass murder into righteous crusade, to see genocide as necessary housekeeping. The techniques he developed for managing public perception during the piracy campaign will serve him well when he needs to justify ever more ambitious projects. The merchants who benefit from safer seas don't ask uncomfortable questions about how that safety was achieved. The coastal cities that no longer pay tribute to pirate chiefs don't inquire too deeply into the methods used to eliminate those chiefs. People prefer simple narratives where good triumphs over evil, and Caesar has learned to provide exactly the narratives they crave. Your execution becomes the template for a new kind of imperial theatre, one where mass murder is presented as moral necessity, and systematic brutality becomes evidence of civilized virtue. The crowds that gathered to watch you die didn't just witness justice, they participated in the creation of a new mythology, one that makes imperial expansion not just acceptable, but spiritually required. The Roman historians who document Caesar's piracy campaign focus on its military brilliance and political benefits. They describe it as a masterpiece of strategic thinking, an example of how proper planning can solve seemingly intractable problems. What they don't mention, perhaps because they don't understand it themselves, is that Caesar has fundamentally altered the relationship between power and morality. Traditional Roman warfare involved defeating enemies and either killing them or making them slaves. Caesar has invented something far more sophisticated. He eliminates enemies by making their existence impossible, then presents this elimination as evidence of Roman virtue rather than Roman power. The distinction matters because virtue is unlimited while power has constraints. A general can only kill so many people before public opinion turns against him. But a moral crusader can eliminate entire populations and be praised for his righteousness. Caesar has discovered how to transform limitless ambition into unlimited mandate, and your death was the proof of concept that demonstrated the viability of this transformation. The psychological profile Caesar developed while studying your crew become the foundation for intelligence gathering throughout the Roman world. His understanding of how criminals think, how they justify their actions, how they bond with their victims, proves invaluable when dealing with rebellious populations who also operate outside Roman law. Gallic chieftains who think they can negotiate with Caesar discover that he understands their psychology better than they understand themselves. He knows which offers will tempt them, which threats will terrify them, which promises will convince them to betray their allies. The weeks he spent as your friendly prisoner taught him lessons about human nature that he'll apply to every subsequent campaign. But the most chilling aspect of Caesar's methodology is how he uses enemy hospitality against enemies themselves. Just as he used your friendliness to gather intelligence for your destruction, he'll use Gallic customs of guest friendship to identify weaknesses in tribal alliances. Every feast he attends, every ceremony he participates in, every moment of apparent cultural exchange becomes an opportunity for psychological reconnaissance. The barbarian leaders who welcome Caesar into their halls think they're demonstrating their sophistication and diplomatic skills. They have no idea they're providing him with detailed intelligence about their internal conflicts, their military capabilities, their economic vulnerabilities. Caesar has learned to transform enemy courtesy into enemy disadvantage, and your crew taught him how. Years later, when Caesar's armies sweep through Gaul with terrifying efficiency, tribal leaders will wonder how Roman forces seem to know exactly where to strike for maximum effect. The answer lies rotting on a beach in Asia Minor, where Caesar learned that enemies will cheerfully provide the intelligence necessary for their own destruction if you're patient enough to listen and charming enough to encourage them. The speed with which Caesar conquers Gaul amazes contemporary observers, but it shouldn't. He's not just fighting battles, he's applying systematic psychological warfare techniques developed during his anti-piracy campaign. Every tribal alliance that crumbles, every chieftain who betrays his people, every population that surrenders without fighting is the result of methods perfected while you thought he was your harmless prisoner. The Helvetii tribe that first encounters Caesar's legions has no idea they're facing an enemy who has already mapped their psychological weaknesses through careful study of tribal behaviour patterns. Caesar understands how barbarian societies function, how they make decisions, how they respond to pressure. Your friendly conversations around pirate campfires taught him lessons about non-Roman psychology that prove invaluable against every subsequent enemy. But Caesar's innovations extend beyond military tactics into the realm of historical narrative itself. He doesn't just conquer enemies, he writes their stories, controls how their defeats are remembered, shapes the very language used to describe their destruction. The commentaries he writes about his Gallic campaigns present systematic genocide as civilizing mission, mass murder as moral necessity. Future generations of Romans will read Caesar's accounts and see noble work rather than naked aggression. They'll understand Gallic resistance as barbarism threatening civilization rather than legitimate defense against invasion. The narrative techniques Caesar developed to justify your elimination will be refined and applied until conquest becomes indistinguishable from righteousness in the Roman imagination. The transformation is so complete that modern historians still struggle to separate Caesar's propaganda from historical fact. His version of events has become the accepted truth, not because it's accurate, but because he understood how to make his version psychologically compelling. The techniques he used to erase pirate culture from Mediterranean memory prove equally effective at erasing inconvenient truths about imperial expansion. Local populations in Gaul, who initially resist Roman invasion, find themselves gradually isolated as Caesar systematically eliminates their support networks. The methods are identical to those he used against pirates. Identify key relationships, exploit existing tensions, turn allies into enemies, then present the resulting chaos as justification for Roman intervention. Gallic tribes that have coexisted for centuries suddenly find themselves in conflict as Caesar manipulates their traditional rivalries for Roman advantage. Warriors who have fought beside each other for decades discover reasons to betray lifelong friends. The psychological techniques Caesar developed while studying pirate crew dynamics prove remarkably effective when applied to barbarian tribal structures. But the most insidious part of Caesar's Gallic strategy is how he uses enemy success against enemies themselves. Just as he encouraged you to increase your own ransom, making your kidnapping more valuable and therefore more worthy of systematic revenge, he encourages Gallic resistance to become more organized and effective, making it more threatening and therefore more deserving of total elimination. Gallic leaders who unite their tribes against Roman invasion think they're demonstrating strategic wisdom. They have no idea they're providing Caesar with exactly the justification he needs to eliminate not just individual tribes, but Gallic culture itself. Organised resistance becomes evidence of barbaric conspiracy, proof that Gauls cannot be trusted to coexist peacefully with civilization. The irony is devastating. Every successful Gallic tactic, every moment of effective resistance, every demonstration of barbarian military competence becomes ammunition for Caesar's propaganda machine. He transforms enemy capability into enemy threat, then uses that threat to justify increasingly brutal countermeasures. Your crew taught him this technique when they successfully extracted 50 talents of ransom, proving their competence and sealing their fate. Caesar's conquest of Gaul follows the same pattern as his elimination of piracy, but on a continental scale: systematic intelligence gathering, psychological manipulation of enemy relationships, transformation of local conflicts into Roman crusades, then complete elimination of resistance through methods so brutal they discourage future opposition. The template works whether applied to pirate crews or entire civilizations. The wealth Caesar extracts from Gaul dwarfs anything pirates ever stole from Roman merchants. Entire tribes are enslaved, their gold confiscated, their lands redistributed to Roman settlers. But this systematic plunder is presented as necessary reimbursement for the costs of civilizing barbarian territories. Caesar has learned to make theft look like justice, genocide appear as generous development aid. Roman merchants who once complained about pirate raids now invest heavily in Gallic development projects, confident that Caesar's methods have eliminated any serious threat to their investments. They don't recognize that they're funding the same systematic brutality that eliminated pirates, just applied on a larger scale to more profitable targets. The senators who initially authorized Caesar's piracy campaign find themselves forced to approve ever more ambitious projects as his reputation for efficient problem-solving grows. Each success creates demand for greater responsibilities. Each victory proves his capability for handling larger challenges. Your death has become the first domino in a sequence that will ultimately topple the Republic itself. But Caesar's ultimate target isn't pirates or barbarians or even foreign enemies. His ultimate target is Rome itself, and every technique he develops for conquering others will eventually be turned against his own people. The psychological warfare methods that eliminated pirates, the propaganda techniques that justified Gallic genocide, the systematic brutality that discouraged resistance, all of this will prove equally effective against Roman opposition. When Caesar finally crosses the Rubicon and marches on Rome, his enemies will face the same methodical destruction that eliminated Mediterranean piracy. Roman senators who oppose him will discover that their traditional political weapons are useless against an enemy who understands systematic psychological manipulation. The techniques that worked against pirates and barbarians work just as well against patricians and plebeians. The civil war that destroys the Roman Republic follows patterns established during Caesar's anti-piracy campaign. Identify existing tensions within the target population. Exploit those tensions to create internal conflict. Present intervention as necessary for peace and order. Then eliminate anyone who might threaten that order. Romans proved no more resistant to these methods than pirates or Gauls. Pompey and the other generals who oppose Caesar think they're fighting a conventional civil war. They have no idea they're facing an enemy who has perfected the art of turning opponents against themselves, who understands how to make resistance psychologically impossible. Your friendly conversations with Caesar taught him lessons about human psychology that prove equally applicable to Roman psychology. The speed with which Caesar's enemies collapsed during the Civil War amazes contemporary observers, but it shouldn't. He's not just fighting battles, he's applying systematic psychological warfare techniques developed over years of conquering others. Every alliance that crumbles, every general who defects, every population that submits without fighting is the result of methods perfected while eliminating pirates and barbarians. Roman senators who thought they could use traditional political maneuvering against Caesar discover that he plays by entirely different rules. He doesn't just defeat political opponents, he eliminates them so completely that their positions become historically untenable. The techniques that erased pirate culture from Mediterranean memory prove equally effective at erasing Republican ideology from Roman consciousness. The transformation happens so gradually that most Romans don't realize their republic has died until long after Caesar has been assassinated and replaced by Augustus. The systematic elimination of republican institutions follows the same pattern as the elimination of piracy. Gradual erosion of support structures, psychological conditioning of the population, presentation of authoritarian solutions as necessary responses to manufactured crises. By the time Romans understand what they've lost, the loss has become irreversible. Caesar has used the techniques developed during his anti-piracy campaign to fundamentally alter Roman political culture, making republican government not just impractical, but literally inconceivable to new generations. The empire that emerges from the republic's ashes operates according to principles Caesar perfected while eliminating pirates. Your death, viewed from this historical perspective, wasn't just an execution. It was the birth of a methodology that would reshape human civilization itself. The techniques Caesar developed to eliminate you and your way of life became the foundation for imperial systems that would endure for centuries, spreading across continents and influencing the development of governmental structures throughout the ancient world. The Roman Empire that emerges from Caesar's conquests operates according to principles first tested on Mediterranean pirates: systematic intelligence gathering, psychological manipulation of subject populations, transformation of resistance into collaboration, elimination of alternatives to imperial authority. Your kidnapping provided the laboratory where these techniques were developed and refined. Modern historians study Caesar's conquests and marvel at their efficiency, their systematic nature, their lasting impact on human development. What they often miss is that all of these achievements flow directly from methods Caesar developed while responding to a simple kidnapping by Mediterranean pirates. Your moment of apparent triumph became the catalyst for transformations that echo through history itself. The crosses where you died have long since rotted away, but the message they delivered continues to resonate through every corner of the former Roman Empire. Some people cannot be kidnapped without consequence. Some insults demand not just satisfaction, but systematic transformation of the entire world order. And some young Romans named Julius Caesar possessed the intelligence, patience, and methodical brutality necessary to achieve that level of comprehensive change. Your story ends in darkness and pain, but the techniques Caesar developed to eliminate you will outlive both of you by centuries. They become part of the imperial toolkit that Rome uses to conquer and control the known world, then spread beyond Rome to influence the development of governmental systems throughout human history. You thought you had captured a prisoner, but Caesar had captured something far more valuable than any individual life. He had captured the methodology of systematic domination itself. The waves that wash your blood from Mediterranean shores carry more than salt water. They carry the memory of transformation, the record of how personal humiliation became imperial triumph, how individual brilliance evolved into systematic oppression. The sea itself has become a witness to the birth of techniques that will reshape human civilization, and your death was the midwife to that terrible birth. In the years that follow, as Caesar's methods spread throughout the Roman world and beyond, other ambitious leaders will study his campaigns and try to understand the source of his success. They'll analyze his military tactics, his political strategies, his propaganda techniques, but most of them will miss the crucial insight that your kidnapping provided. True power lies not in the ability to defeat enemies, but in the ability to make enemy existence impossible. Caesar understood this principle intuitively, and your death was his first systematic application of it. Every subsequent campaign, every political maneuver, every imperial innovation flows directly from lessons learned during those weeks when you thought he was your prisoner. Your kidnapping wasn't just a crime that demanded punishment. It was a masterclass in human psychology that provided Caesar with the tools he needed to conquer the world. The Mediterranean continues to serve as the highway of civilization, but now it does so according to principles established through your elimination. Safe passage for merchants, secure communications between provinces, reliable transportation for imperial officials, all of this flows from the systematic removal of piracy that began with your execution. Your death purchased not just temporary safety, but permanent transformation of maritime culture. Trade routes that once provided hunting grounds for pirates now serve as arteries for imperial administration. The same winds that once carried your ships toward merchant prey now power the galleys that maintain Roman peace throughout the Mediterranean basin. Even the weather itself has been conscripted into imperial service, transformed from ally of criminals into instrument of imperial control. But the most lasting legacy of your death isn't political or military, it's methodological. Caesar has demonstrated that systematic application of intelligence and brutality can solve any problem, overcome any resistance, eliminate any opposition. The techniques that worked against pirates will work against anyone who stands in the way of properly motivated imperial authority. Future emperors will study Caesar's campaigns and adopt his methods for their own purposes. The systematic brutality that eliminated Mediterranean piracy becomes the template for dealing with rebellious provinces, resistant populations, inconvenient political opponents. Your execution wasn't just the end of your life, it was the beginning of a new age of systematic imperial domination. The crosses where you and your crew died become pilgrimage sites for ambitious Romans seeking to understand the source of imperial power. They stand on that beach and try to comprehend how personal humiliation was transformed into systematic triumph, how individual grievance became imperial mandate. The answer is always the same. Caesar understood that true victory requires not just defeating enemies, but making enemy existence impossible. Your kidnapping provided him with the perfect laboratory for developing and testing this understanding. Every friendly conversation, every shared meal, every moment of apparent camaraderie was actually Caesar conducting experiments in psychological manipulation and intelligence gathering. Your crew became unwitting test subjects in the development of techniques that would reshape human civilization. The irony is inescapable. You thought you were exploiting Roman weakness, but you were actually revealing Roman strength. You believed you were taking advantage of imperial neglect, but you were providing the empire with exactly the opportunity it needed to demonstrate the full scope of its capabilities. Your moment of triumph became the catalyst for your culture's extinction and Rome's unlimited expansion. Caesar's response to your kidnapping echoes through every subsequent imperial campaign, every conquest, every transformation of resistance into collaboration. The techniques he developed while eliminating pirates become the standard operating procedures for imperial expansion, refined and applied until they become indistinguishable from civilization itself. The Mediterranean world that emerges from your death operates according to principles that would be immediately recognizable to any modern student of systematic oppression. Comprehensive intelligence gathering, psychological manipulation of target populations, transformation of local conflicts into imperial crusades, complete elimination of alternatives to imperial authority. Caesar invented the playbook that empires have been using ever since. Your body has long since returned to dust, but the methods Caesar developed to eliminate you continue to shape human history.